Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a question that often comes up when people learn I'm a nurse. What was your scariest moment while on the job? It's a question that always makes me pause, because in a profession where life and death are daily companions, scary takes on many forms. There are the immediate, heart-stopping emergencies, the codes, the traumas. But then there are the other kinds of scary, the slow, creeping dread of a patient declining, the ethical quagmires, the moments when you feel utterly powerless despite all your training and dedication. The story I'm going to share with you today isn't about a sudden, dramatic medical crisis, at least not in the traditional sense. It's about a different kind of terror, one that unfolded over weeks, a battle not just against disease, but against dogma, against the very system designed to protect life. It was a time when I truly feared for a patient's life, not because of a failing organ, but because of a failing human connection, and the chilling power of a decision made by someone else. This is the story of Rose, Raymond, and the heart that almost wasn't. Our story begins, as many do, in the sterile, yet profoundly human, environment of a hospital. Specifically, it was the cardiac ward, a place where hope and despair often walked hand in hand. I was a charge nurse there, and my days were a whirlwind of managing patient care, coordinating with doctors, comforting families, and sometimes simply holding a hand. One of my long-term patients was Rose. Rose wasn't just a patient, she was a force of nature, even when her body was failing her. In her late 60s, with a bright, inquisitive mind and a laugh that could light up the entire ward, she had a spirit that refused to be dimmed by her severe dilated cardiomyopathy, a condition where her heart was so enlarged and weakened it could no longer pump blood effectively. Rose needed a new heart, a full cardiac transplant, and she had been on the transplant list for what felt like an eternity. She was a fighter, a former teacher who had instilled a love of learning in countless children, and now she was fighting for her own life with every ounce of that vibrant spirit. Rose had a son, Raymond. Raymond was her only child, and on paper, he was her primary advocate, her durable power of attorney for healthcare, or DPOA. This meant he had the legal authority to make medical decisions for Rose if she was deemed unable to make them for herself. Now, Rose, despite her physical frailty, was sharp as a tack. She was fully oriented, understood her condition, and was unequivocally clear about her desire for a transplant. She wanted to live, to see her grandchildren grow, to finish the novel she was writing. She had signed all the necessary consent forms, participated in every evaluation, and expressed her wishes repeatedly, both verbally and in writing. But Raymond saw things differently. He was a devout man, a follower of a particular religious denomination that held strong beliefs against organ transplantation. To him, the body was a sacred vessel, and tampering with it, especially by replacing an organ with one from another person, was an affront to God's will. He believed that Rose should accept her fate, that her time was coming, and that she should pass naturally, with her body intact. This was our initial, devastating conflict. Here was Rose, a woman with a will to live, with a mental capacity to make her own choices, desperate for a life-saving procedure. And here was Raymond, her son, legally empowered to override her wishes, standing as an unyielding barrier between his mother and her last, best hope for survival. The air in Rose's room, usually filled with her cheerful banter, was often thick with unspoken tension whenever Raymond visited. We, the healthcare team, felt it acutely. We knew Rose's wishes, we saw her fading, and we knew the clock was ticking. The question wasn't if a heart would become available, but what would happen when it did, and how we could possibly navigate this impossible ethical and legal minefield. It was, in its own quiet way, one of the most terrifying situations I had ever faced as a nurse. The call came on a Tuesday, late in the afternoon. The transplant coordinator's voice, usually calm and measured, carried an undeniable tremor of excitement. "We have a match for Rose," she announced, her words echoing through the nursing station. "A perfect match, excellent viability, and the donor is stable. We need to move quickly." A collective gasp went through the team. Hope, raw and exhilarating, surged through us. Rose, after all this time, all the waiting, the false alarms, the heartbreaking disappointments, a heart. We had been preparing for this moment for so long, running through contingency plans, discussing the ethical tightrope we walked with Raymond. but nothing truly prepares you for the sheer, unadulterated joy that sweeps through a team when a patient, especially one as beloved as Rose, gets a second chance. I rushed to Rose's room, my heart pounding with a mixture of elation and apprehension. She was sitting up in bed, looking frail but her eyes still sparkling. "Rose," I began, trying to keep my voice steady, "we have some incredible news." Her face, already etched with the lines of illness, transformed. A radiant smile spread across it, a genuine, unfettered expression of pure joy that I hadn't seen in months. She whispered, her voice barely audible, but her eyes wide with wonder. I nodded, tears pricking my own eyes. "Yes, Rose. A beautiful, healthy heart, just for you. They are preparing the operating room now. We need to get you ready." For a brief, precious moment, the room was filled with nothing but pure, unadulterated hope. Rose started to cry, tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, thank God," she murmured. "Thank God." We helped her with her pre-op shower, started the necessary Roman 4, and explained the next steps. The energy in the room was electric. This was it. This was the moment we had all been waiting for. But then, the shadow of Raymond loomed. The coordinator had already tried to reach him, leaving urgent messages. We knew he would have to be informed, and we knew what his response would likely be. The hope, so vibrant just moments before, began to mingle with a chilling dread. The gift of life was here, tangible, within reach. But the person who held the legal key to that gift was the very person who opposed it. The conflict, which had been a simmering undercurrent, now roared to the surface, threatening to extinguish Rose's last flicker of hope. The race against time wasn't just about the viability of the donor heart, it was about navigating a legal and ethical battle that could cost Rose her life. The clock was ticking, not just on a surgical procedure, but on a human right. The moment Rose received the news, our team sprang into action, but not just with medical preparations. We were simultaneously engaged in a desperate, frantic scramble to buy time and find a way around Raymond. Our hospital's ethics committee had been involved for weeks, but their previous recommendations had been advisory, not legally binding. Now, with a viable heart on the line, the situation was critical. Our initial strategy was born of sheer desperation and a profound sense of injustice. We knew Raymond's religious beliefs were deeply ingrained and that direct confrontation would be futile. Our priority was Rose's life. So, we started to stretch the boundaries of what was professionally acceptable. When Raymond called back, his voice already edged with suspicion, we provided vague updates. "Rose is stable, Raymond. We're monitoring her closely. There have been some developments, but we're still assessing all options." We deliberately omitted the crucial detail of the donor heart. It felt like a betrayal of our professional ethics, a lie by omission, but to us it was a necessary evil. A desperate attempt to create a window, however small, to get Rose to surgery. We reasoned that if she was already in the ER with the procedure underway, it might be harder for Raymond to stop it. This was an incredibly stressful tightrope walk, and every member of the team felt the weight of it. We were nurses, doctors, and transplant coordinators, not lawyers or strategists, but we were fighting for our patient's life with every tool we had. We began prepping Rose for the operating room with a quiet urgency, trying to shield her from the mounting tension. We told her that the team was working on logistics, hoping to keep her spirits up without burdening her with the legal battle unfolding around her. The surgical team was on standby, the heart was being transported, and every minute counted. We were just about to transport Rose to pre-op when Raymond burst through the doors of the cardiac ward. He wasn't just angry, he was incandescent with rage. His face was flushed, his eyes blazing, and his voice, usually controlled, was now a guttural roar that echoed down the quiet hallway. "What are you doing?" he demanded, pointing a trembling finger at Rose's bed, where we were about to disconnect her from some monitors. "I heard you have a heart. You think you can just bypass me? I am her power of attorney. I forbid this. I absolutely forbid it." He moved with startling speed, positioning himself between Rose's bed and the door to the elevator, his body a formidable, unyielding barrier. He started yelling about his religious convictions, about the sanctity of the body, about God's will. He threatened us with lawsuits, with reporting us to the medical board, with ruining our careers. His words were a torrent of accusations, and his presence was physically intimidating. Nurses, usually unflappable, flinched. Doctors tried to reason with him, calmly explaining Rose's expressed wishes, her mental capacity, the legal implications. But Raymond was beyond reason. He saw us as conspirators, as agents of a system trying to violate his mother's soul. He was so consumed by his beliefs that he seemed utterly deaf to the pleas for his mother's life. He physically blocked any attempt to move Rose, standing guard, his arms crossed, his jaw clenched. The hospital's security was called, but they could only ensure Raymond didn't become physically violent. They couldn't force him to relinquish his legal authority. The transplant surgeon, who had flown in specifically for this procedure, stood by, his face grim. The donor heart, a precious gift of life, was now in transit, its viability window ticking down with every passing minute of this standoff. The agonizing reality hit us like a physical blow. Rose lost the first opportunity for a heart. The transplant team eventually had to inform us that the heart had to be offered to the next eligible patient on the list. The disappointment in Rose's eyes was heartbreaking. She understood what had happened, even if we tried to soften the blow. Her hope, which had soared so high, now crashed, leaving behind a profound emptiness. We watched, helpless, as the light in her eyes dimmed a little more, her spirit taking another hit. It was a moment of profound defeat, a medical tragedy caused not by disease, but by human conflict. The immediate aftermath was a whirlwind of activity, but of a very different kind. We, the healthcare team, were devastated, but also galvanized. We meticulously documented every detail of Raymond's intervention. His threats, his refusal, the specific time the heart was lost. Every nurse, every doctor, every staff member involved wrote detailed incident reports. This wasn't just about covering ourselves, it was about building a case. The hospital's legal department, which had been monitoring the situation, now became fully engaged. The ethics committee reconvened, no longer just for advice, but to formulate a concrete strategy to protect Rose. We were now fighting not just for a heart, but for Rose's fundamental right to self-determination. We began to explore all possible avenues. Could Rose's depot be challenged? Could her clear, documented wishes override her son's religious objections, especially given her mental capacity? These were complex legal and ethical questions, and our hospital's legal team began working around the clock. They started preparing to petition the courts for an emergency ruling to either revoke Raymond's depot or, at the very least, to limit its scope in this specific life or death decision. In the meantime, Rose's condition continued to deteriorate. We couldn't just wait for a court ruling. We had to stabilize her. The medical team decided on an urgent measure, an LVAD, or left ventricular assist device surgery. An LVAD is a mechanical pump surgically implanted in the chest, connected to the heart to help it pump blood. It's a bridged transplant, designed to keep patients alive and relatively stable while they wait for a donor heart. It's a major surgery with its own risks and complications, and it significantly impacts a patient's quality of life, requiring constant battery changes and meticulous care. But it was Rose's only option to buy more time. Raymond, surprisingly, did not object to the LVAD, as it wasn't a transplant in his religious definition, and he understood it was necessary to keep his mother alive. The LVAD surgery was successful, providing Rose with a temporary reprieve, but it also introduced new challenges. Her recovery was arduous, and the sight of her, tethered to a machine, was a constant reminder of the heart she had lost and the battle still ahead. The tension in the hospital escalated dramatically. There were endless meetings, capacity evaluations to reaffirm Rose's mental competence, and interviews with social workers, ethics consultants, and legal counsel. Everyone who had interacted with Rose was asked to provide statements about her wishes and her ability to make decisions. Then came the emergency court hearings. These were tense, emotionally charged affairs. Raymond presented his case, citing his religious beliefs and his legal authority. Our hospital's legal team presented Rose's clear, consistent wishes, supported by our medical assessments of her capacity. Rose, too frail to attend in person, provided a powerful, tearful statement via video expressing her fervent desire to live and her profound distress at her son's actions. The courtroom became a battleground of faith versus autonomy, family duty versus individual rights. Every day felt like a week, every hearing a lifetime. We, the nurses, felt the pressure acutely, knowing that Rose's life literally hung in the balance, waiting on the gavel of a judge. This protracted legal and ethical struggle, far more than any medical emergency, was the scariest moment of my nursing career. The feeling of helplessness, of watching life slip away due to a conflict that felt so utterly solvable, was soul-crushing. The day of the final court ruling felt like an eternity compressed into a single, agonizing morning. We were all on pins and needles, huddled around the hospital's legal counsel, waiting for the call. Rose was in her room, trying to read, but her gaze was distant, her hands trembling. She knew what was at stake. We all did. The air in the ward was thick with a palpable tension, a collective holding of breath. When the call finally came, it was our legal counsel, her voice cracking with emotion. "We won," she announced. The judge sided with Rose. He ruled that due to her clear and consistent mental capacity, and her unequivocal expression of her wishes, her right to self-determination overrides Raymond's depot in this specific matter of life-saving organ transplantation. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Tears sprang to my eyes, and I saw similar reactions from my colleagues. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was a moral one, the triumph for patient autonomy and the human spirit. I rushed to Rose's room, barely able to contain my excitement. "Rose," I exclaimed, my voice choked with emotion, "the judge ruled in your favor. You have the right to decide." Her face, initially a mask of apprehension, slowly broke into a tearful smile. "Really?" she whispered. I can choose." I nodded, unable to speak, just letting the joyous tears flow. She closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, a tear of pure, unadulterated relief. "Thank God," she breathed. "Thank God." The very next day, as if divine providence was at play, another call came. "We have another heart for Rose." The transplant coordinator's voice was cautious this time, but beneath it, I could hear the renewed hope. "It's an excellent match, even better than the last one, and the donor is stable. We need to move immediately." This time, there was no hesitation, no legal barrier. We moved with a practiced, almost military precision, but imbued with a fierce, joyful determination. Rose was prepped, her spirits soaring. The fear was still there, the inherent risks of such a massive surgery, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of purpose. This was her second chance, a chance we had fought tooth and nail for. The hours of surgery were excruciating. We waited at the nursing station, updating Rose's family, including a subdued Raymond who had been informed of the court's decision and was now present, quietly observing. Each minute felt like an hour. We checked the board incessantly, watching the status change from in surgery to recovery. Finally, the transplant surgeon emerged, tired but beaming. "It was a complete success," he announced, his voice hoarse. "The heart is beating strong, Rose is stable, and she's being transferred to recovery." The collective cheer from the nursing staff, the quiet sighs of relief from Rose's family, and the profound sense of accomplishment that settled over us were moments I will never forget. Rose had made it. She had survived not just her failing heart, but the battle for her right to live. It was the culmination of weeks of emotional turmoil, legal battles, and medical interventions, and in that moment, seeing the tangible result of our unwavering advocacy, I knew we had faced down the scariest challenge of all and emerged victorious. The immediate aftermath of the transplant was, as expected, a challenging journey. Rose spent several days in the ICU, followed by weeks in the cardiac recovery unit. Her body, already weakened by chronic illness and the LVAD surgery, had to adapt to a new heart and a regimen of immunosuppressant drugs. There were ups and downs, moments of worry, and the constant vigilance required after such a complex procedure. But through it all, Rose's indomitable spirit shone brighter than ever. She was determined to recover, to live the life she had fought so hard to reclaim. We watched in awe as she slowly but steadily regained her strength, her color returning, her laugh, oh still a little hoarse, filling the ward once more. Seeing her take her first steps, eat her first full meal, and then, finally, walk out of the hospital doors, was a profound moment of triumph for everyone involved. With Rose's successful transplant, the immediate medical crisis was resolved, but the ripples of the legal battle continued to spread. The court's decision set a significant precedent, and the hospital's legal team worked to formalize the limitations on Raymond's DPOA. His authority was not entirely revoked, as he still had a role in other medical decisions that did not directly contradict Rose's expressed wishes and mental capacity. However, in any future life or death scenario where Rose was deemed competent and had clearly articulated her desires, her autonomy would take precedence. It was a crucial clarification that protected future patients in similar situations. Perhaps one of the most unexpected and heartwarming outcomes was the gradual reconciliation between Rose and Raymond. Initially, Raymond was distant, visibly struggling with the court's decision and his mother's choice. He visited, but his interactions were stilted, filled with an awkward silence. Rose, ever the compassionate one, gave him space, but also gently reaffirmed her love for him and her gratitude for his presence, even if they disagreed. Over time, as Raymond witnessed his mother's incredible recovery, saw her vibrancy return, and heard her speak of her renewed joy in life, something shifted within him. He saw not a violation of faith, but a miracle of modern medicine, and perhaps a testament to his mother's profound will to live. He began to see his mother not as a vessel to be kept intact for religious reasons, but as a person, full of life and love, who deserved to live it to the fullest. Eventually, he started bringing her favorite flowers, reading to her, and even engaging in light-hearted banter. Their relationship didn't completely heal overnight, but a bridge was built, founded on respect for Rose's choice and Raymond's evolving understanding. The case of Rose had a lasting impact on our hospital and, I believe, on healthcare practices beyond our walls. It prompted a comprehensive review of our depot policies and patient autonomy protocols. New guidelines were implemented to ensure that a patient's expressed wishes and mental capacity were thoroughly assessed and given paramount consideration, especially when conflicting with the depot decisions based on personal beliefs. Training programs for staff were enhanced, focusing on navigating complex ethical dilemmas and advocating for patient rights. The hospital established a more robust ethics consultation service, making it easier for staff to seek guidance and legal support in challenging cases. Rose's story became a case study, ensuring that her struggle would pave the way for clearer, more patient-centered care for others. For me, personally, this experience was transformative. It solidified my belief in the fundamental importance of patient advocacy. It taught me that sometimes nursing isn't just about administering medication or monitoring vital signs. It's about being a voice for the voiceless, a protector of rights, and a fierce champion for patients' will to live. It was a harrowing, emotionally draining experience, but it forged in me a deeper resolve and a renewed sense of purpose. I carried those lessons into every subsequent patient interaction, always asking, what does this person truly want? And how can I help them achieve it, even when the odds seem insurmountable? It made me a better, stronger, and more empathetic nurse, forever grateful for the privilege of standing by Rose's side during her scariest moment, and ultimately, her greatest triumph. Today, years later, Rose is not just surviving, she is thriving. She lives a full, vibrant life, a testament to her resilience and the power of a second chance. She finished her novel, which, fittingly, is a story about overcoming adversity. She travels, volunteers at a local community center, and, most importantly, spends precious quality time with her grandchildren, watching them grow, just as she dreamed. She even became an advocate for organ donation, sharing her story to encourage others to consider giving the gift of life. Her laughter, once fragile, now rings out with a newfound strength, a joyful melody that reminds me of the miracle she embodies. My sense of accomplishment from Rose's case remains one of the most profound feelings of my career. It wasn't just about saving a life, it was about upholding the very essence of what it means to be human, the right to choose, to hope, and to fight for one's existence. It affirmed for me, beyond any doubt, the invaluable role of healthcare professionals in protecting patient rights, sometimes against incredible odds. And Raymond, he eventually came to terms with his mother's choice. Seeing her vibrant, living proof of the medical miracle softened his stance. He now visits her regularly, shares meals, and even proudly tells stories about her new adventures. He has accepted her decision, and more than that, he now supports her, cheering her on as she embraces every moment of her renewed life. He learned, as we all did, that love, in its truest form, often means respecting another's autonomy, even when it challenges our deepest convictions. So, when people ask me about my scariest moment, I don't just tell them about the crashing codes or the traumatic injuries. I tell them about Rose, about the chilling fear of watching a life slip away, not from disease, but from a battle of wills, and the immense relief and profound joy of witnessing the triumph of human spirit and the power of relentless advocacy. It was a terrifying ordeal, but ultimately it was a story of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief in a patient's right to live. And that, my friends, is a lesson I carry with me every single day. Outro music fades in gently.